Howdy folks, me again. So going through all this, I found I did have another failure. The bolts for my lockout hub, I've got the on the Rocks full float kit here. The bolts for the locking hub got loose. They've been kind of getting loose on me and I've been tightening up. I've got these, we make the original Belleville spring washers for Spicer hubs. They're a one-time use only. I'm well aware of that. I've been reusing them every time I get this thing apart because I wanted to test these too. Really they only stay tight the first time. Most of them stayed tight the second time. Some on the other side are still tight several times later, and I did have to tighten some bolts up on the other side. But I did have a bolt break on this hub. I ripped it off before I thought about grabbing the camera. But I've been greasing the holes where these bolts go in instead of Loctite, so if one does break, because I've had it happen on other stuff before, you can just reach in there with a pick and back the thing right out, you know. So anyway, I had one broken one. This one looks okay. It's going to get replaced anyway, but some of these, this one's bent. That one's bent. This one has a window in it. That was real close to breaking. And that one also has a window in it. So we'll call those broke. Three broke, three bent, probably just about ready to break. I bet if I hooked them up in the vise and just tapped them, they'd break right in half. But anyway, got those out. Got my locking hub off. Found I had water in it. These worn hubs, let me grab it. These worn hubs seal with an O-ring right there. And it was backed out right to that O-ring. I can see where it was kind of doing the back and forth on the O-ring. So anyway, let some water in. It doesn't look like a seal failed anywhere. The weed poles are still here for the factory, where it purges the factory grease in the back of behind the brake shield here. There might be a little bit of water in there, but I pulled the shaft out and it doesn't, it just looks like grease on it. So it doesn't appear that water was getting in there. It was just getting in through my locking hub, which I noticed they were loose when I was out gallivanting, and I just forgot to tighten them. Even today, I just ran this thing to town. I was going to tighten them up, and I just forgot. I bet if I did that, I probably wouldn't have had any broken ones. It probably would have been a little bent and stretched, but I forgot about it. But that's okay. So it looks like, well, I can't really see what it looks like, I guess. I don't know if this bearing spun a little bit on the spindle here, or if there's just grit in between and it's stuck on. But I had to get the old 3-jaw puller to get the hub off. I didn't have to put much pressure on, just enough so the seal would fall out of it. So the bearing's still there. I knocked out the inner race. And we're going to use a pinion and diff bearing puller, but I guess you can pull whatever kind of bearing you want to as long as the tool fits on here. So we'll get this set up and see how it goes. I already did most of the setup. So how this works is you put the race on, and this part of the tool will push on the race. This grabs the cage, and then that way it doesn't... the bearing doesn't just, fly apart. You still got the inner part sitting there that you got to pull off. So we'll get this on here. Maybe. Of course, I had it set up before I hit record, and now it's not going to work. There we go. Maybe. That. Okay. Now we'll give her the old Uggy Duggies. Easy peasy. So let's see what we got here. Okay, there's our bearing. And it doesn't look like it spun any. It looked like it just, where did it? No, I don't think it spun any. If it did, it wasn't much. I think it just got kind of hot. When I drove it to town, I noticed a little whine on the way back. I wonder what it was. But anyway, looks like it just got a little hot and kind of baked on there. It wasn't really stuck that bad. We can take the seal off now. Just like that. Let's clean these parts up and go to the bench. So we went ahead and took this apart, and I figured I'd do a little before and after. Here's the outer bearing, kind of brown. Race, same thing, pretty brown outside the contact points. I don't know if these will still be good. We'll clean them up and see, but I'd like to reuse everything here, even the seal. If it looks okay, just purely testing purposes. Normally you'd want to just change this stuff out. The inner bearing here isn't really, it kind of turns. We'll wash it and see what it looks like, but it's real nasty there. I've got some on me. Yeah, I bet you if I would have kept driving after I got it wet, it probably would have been fine. This grease did a really good job absorbing water and keeping it away from the metal everywhere where there wasn't, you know, friction right where the rollers are. And then it sat for a few weeks between getting back, and then after I was back it sat on the trailer another couple weeks. I bet you if I would have kept driving it so it didn't have time to rust and build up little crusties, probably would have been fine. I don't know. The other side's fine. So the driver's side rear, it still has the factory inner oil seal behind the brake shield there. It leaks. So there's oil going into the locking hub, which fine, just extra lubrication. But that side didn't get as loose, and even if water did get in, the oil still looks thick. It's just the gear oil from the diff getting into it. Still looks good. Wasn't washed out or anything. So maybe if I do a more in-depth rebuild, I'll just take both side seals out and just have it oil bath on the into the hubs. It won't hurt anything. It might seep a little bit out the locking hub dials, just a little, but other than that, I'd probably rather do that than you know, have this again, just because I don't drive it much. You know, if anything does get in there and does contact metal, that's just what happens. Best grease on the planet isn't gonna stop that. But the grease looks like it did slow it down quite a bit. The inside of the hub here isn't rusty anywhere. There's just some filthy oil in there. Looks like there is a little bit of rust here. There wasn't any grease in, I don't know if you can see the little channels on the side here where you drive your bearings out. There was no grease there. It's dry and it's a little orange, but you know, even the spindle looked good wherever grease was touching it, which was pretty much the whole thing. So let's wash these up and see what we got to work with here. Okay. Okay, after a quick bath in the dishwasher, we've got our pretty clean bearings. I sprayed them with oil. they still are fairly smooth. There is, you can run your fingernail on the race. There is some pitting and stuff just where it's sat. And there's also some pitting on the rollers. But I got most of the rust broke off and flushed out. And actually I've got some rust dip. I'll probably wash the oil back off of these and put them in that just for half hour or so to get the rest. This is the inner. It's a little worse than the outer. The outer had more orange gunk built up in it. But the inner has more pitting and stuff like that. But it also is somewhat smooth. So I think what I'm going to do is reuse these strictly for research purposes and see what happens. I'll probably put some thinner grease in. I've got some closed knuckle grease that's pretty thin and still EP rated for stuff like bearings. Either that, or I could build a dam, put the hub on the spindle, build a dam with grease, and then fill it with oil. I'm not sure which I'll do. I might just try the closed knuckle lube because it'll be a lot easier. It'll stay in place long enough for me to squirt it in there, and then I can slap the outer bearing on and tighten it up. Either way I go, it will migrate out to the locking hub. But for the rear, I'm not too worried about extra grease getting packed in there because they're always locked unless I have some kind of failure, and then it'll be unlocked. But really not too worried about that. Generally locking hubs, you don't want a whole lot of grease in. So we'll do that, and I will put grease back in the bolt holes like I did before. That one that was broke off, it just spun right out with a pick, or I guess I used a punch, but a pick I've used before on the front when I broke one. It's Sunday today. I got to wait till Monday to get a couple, or I guess a set of these bolts, but I got the Allen head bolts, and of course they were just the oxide finish, so they turn orange on the outside too. But I'm not too worried about that. As long as you can still get the Allen key in there, that's good enough. The Belleville lock washers, I may try and, it's spring steel, I may try and re-arc these to use again. We'll see. I might have something I can use in here. If not, there's always a Nordlock washer I could use that if I wasn't in and out of it all the time, that'd be a perfect thing. The thing with those is they tend to tear up whatever they contact when you take them off. But we'll see. I've got a bag of them around here somewhere. But first I'm going to try and re-arc these and just see if I can use them again. And if I can get them redone, I'll just go ahead and do... I've got these all the way around, so I might as well do them all. Because they all started getting loose a couple times after I had everything off, checking, back on. So yeah, that's what we got. The seal is definitely worn a little bit, and I tried it on the spindle. It's not as tight as they are new, but I'll probably reuse this just for fun. And of course the nut and washer hardware is still good. This particular one has the tabbed outer lock washer. A lot of them are just smooth, a little smaller diameter than this. Either one works just fine, but there's still enough good tabs on that to use it. I'll probably soak the races too. Let's see. Yeah, I might as well soak the races too. And then when we go back together, we're going to use QT 1802 race installer. And we're not going to use the proper seal installer for this. We're going to use a QT 1161. It'll go flat onto there, and then this other side's a little bit smaller. I'm going to recess this seal in just a little bit. There's a little rust right where this was riding, just on the inside part. So we'll set the seal in a little bit deeper to get on a good new sealing surface. It's grooved a little bit. With the new seal, I got the rust out of the right behind on the back end of the groove there. With the new seal, nothing to worry about, but because I am reusing the old seal, I'm going to offset it just a little bit. So yeah, we'll wait till tomorrow so I can get some more parts and go from there. And we're back. So this morning I went and got new bolts, and I got some Windrock washers. I am going to try to re-arc the Belleville washers, but just in case I can't get it, I got these. They're quite large in diameter for where they're going. I may have to chuck them up and trim them down. I don't know yet. If you're not familiar with a Windrock, they're kind of a two-piece deal. If I can get it apart, they just stick them together with a couple dots of silicone or some kind of adhesive. Basically what they do, they make it so the fastener is a righty-tighty and a lefty-tighty. The righty-tighty is the threads getting tight, and how these work is they dig into the bolt head and also the surface of whatever you're attaching to, and they're tapered, so if it does start to loosen, these two halves spread apart, so it makes it a righty-tighty and a lefty-tighty. So we'll try that, and I think I am going to go with the closed knuckle lubricant that's real thin. It should flow. The reason why I want it to flow, I guess I didn't go over that, there's gonna be little bits of metal flaking off these. They're kind of rough, they're not too bad. Don't know if you can hear that. There is oil on these. I want grease to flow through, so regular wheel bearing grease doesn't flow too well until it gets hot. It just kind of sticks. You can actually pack bearings with grease and not put any extra grease in the hub, and you know that grease isn't going anywhere unless you're driving a race car. Then centrifugal force will, you know, flatten it out and spread it all over the place. But I want it to flow, so it the theory is so that it kind of keeps it clean and all the heavier metal bits will stick to the outside of the hub. I'm not going to leave this on there forever. These old bearings are on there forever. But for a while, I want to run them like this a while and just see what happens. It did pit down in, probably not beyond the surface hardening, but it's, you know, they are shot technically, but strictly for research purposes. We're going to keep running them. So we'll take our 1802. Whoa. Looks like I gotta clean up this driver a little bit. Kind of stuck on there. It's okay. Okay. That's good. Maybe we'll do it one more just to be safe. Okay. Those are in. I am not going to pack these bearings because the grease I'm using will flow into them. Shop tools. Sometimes they need a little maintenance. Okay, now we'll put our seal in. Again, this is not the proper tool for this seal, but it's going to do what I need it to do. And then we'll just tap it in just a little bit more. Close enough. So I've set this seal in just slightly more than flush, and we're ready to go back together. Grease flowed in through the bearings real nice, just slapping it on there. So I think this is going to work good. What we're going for is just a little bit of end play.
Sounds like some good bearings.
Yeah, they are now. Well, they're clean anyway. Usually I don't have to go more than a quarter turn or so. These ones, a little more, close to a third of a turn. Can't quite feel it, but Well, yeah, just a little bit. So we should be good there. I forget how many thousandths, 3 to 5 thousandths, or I forget exactly how many thousandths of end play you want, but as long as you can just barely feel it, that's usually pretty close. Actually, I should turn that around. I'm just making sure that this little tab here doesn't contact the tab on the inner washer. And this one, most of the time you can put them in. This one I gotta put out, it looks like. Have it facing out. Usually they fit facing in, but they're all stamped just a little bit different. You also want to make sure the nut is, these are stamped and they deform a little bit, the surface of them. So you make sure you put the side that's going to contact the washer and not hang up on the tabs. And then these get pretty tight. And I forget the exact spec, but I'm just going by feel of what I've done from when I've looked it up in the past. And actually, that kind of tightened up on me a little bit. So there's a little bit of slack in the threads. When you tighten the internet up, it's kind of getting pushed outwards. When you tighten the internet up, it'll seat those threads inward, and as you can see, it kind of tightened it up some. So I do have to loosen the inner up just a little bit. And that's about the worst part of setup on a double nut system. Just making sure you got everything just the way it needs to be. Go a little bit more there. Spins real nice for bad bearings, loose. Can still feel just a little bit. It did tighten it up a little bit more there. It's still good, still not bad. So now we just need a locking hub. You got to tighten it just a little, or squeeze it in just a little bit as that O-ring sets in there. Then it's good. So all we got to do now is put the bolt in, these full float kits don't use a snap ring. Use a little bolt, the end of the shaft is drilled. So we'll put that in. And the bolts, I'm going to grease the holes, and I'll check. It'll take me a while to check clearance on those Nordlock washers, and it'll also take me a while to try to retaper those spring washers. That's it, then we go back together.